Bosk, as the box says, is a game of majestic trees and falling leaves. There's a very good description because it also already indicates the fact that the game is divided in two different phases. In one you place trees, and in the other one you will remove the trees and you will place falling leaves. It's a nice game, visually very appealing. Visually it may remind you a little bit of photosynthesis, especially because of the game components representing the trees. As you can see, the difference is that the size doesn't matter like it does in photosynthesis, but trees do have numbers on them, and that does matter a lot. You have the board here. As you can see, it is divided in squares by a grid. Don't worry about these components here, they're not used in the first half of the game. So the first half of the game, the one about the majestic trees, is simplicity itself. Simply the players will alternate taking trees from the supplies and putting them at the intersection of lines on the board, just like you see here. The trees cannot be on the edges, they have to be on the board, they cannot be in weird positions, just put them there at the intersection of things. And don't make it look too weird. And that's how the first phase goes. The first phase then will be scored as a game of line majority, not area majority, not just yet. By which I mean that at the end of this phase, when all the trees have been placed, we'll look at each line, so each column and each row, and we count the total value of the trees on them. We don't look at the number of trees, but exclusively at the numbers printed on the trees. And then how much is that worth? The easiest thing is if I show you here the player rate printed on the back of the rule book, because the value of each line is based on the number of players in first place, again based on the value of the trees there, and the number of players in second place. Suppose I'm the only player that has something on a certain line, then I'm the first in first place. I'm alone in first place. And here we go, and there's no one behind me because I'm alone on that line. Boom. It is a tie for first place. Doesn't matter how many people are in second place. That's how many points we get, and so on and so forth. So you simply look at those values, and there you go. You assign those points. Then the second part of the game starts. The player with the fewest points gets to decide where this template goes. It will be placed next to one of the four edges of the board. Suppose that the unfortunate player decides for that edge and we place it there. We also take this marker, it looks like a little house, but it's an arrow, and we put it next to the first spot there. Maybe if they put it maybe a different color, then it would be more visible if you put it on the arrow there. As you can see, spots on this track, some have a number and an arrow, some have an arrow and an asterisk. The arrow indicates the direction in which the wind will blow. In the second phase of the game, that is when we also use these other components. Each player has a set of leaf tiles with different values on them, and one of them has a squirrel. Then you have a number of leaf tokens, and you have a squirrel, which at least in my version also came with this deluxe mega awesome squirrel. The way it works in turns order, we look at this track, and each player will choose one of their trees, number one, the ones with the number one on them. Say red player could choose this one, or could choose this one, yellow player this one, or this one. Suppose red player goes first, then red player chooses one of their one trees and say that is the decision. We look at the direction of the wind, so we know that's the direction in which the leaves will blow, and then the player chooses one of their tokens and chooses how many leaves are blown by the tree in that direction. Suppose the player chooses 4. Then starting from that tree, the player will place four leaves. I'll move this one just so you can see. The first leaf needs to be in one of the 2 squares that are adjacent to the tree in the direction of the wind, which is in this case is that way. So I could place it here. The following ones had to be in one of the 3 squares adjacent to the previous leaf, again in the direction of the wind, straight ahead or one diagonal. And suppose that I want my second leaf to get there, and then my third leaf to get there, and then my fourth leaf to get there. And once I'm done, I remove the tree that was there. I don't think it's dead, but now everybody's looking at the leaf, and so the tree becomes psychologically invisible. We don't see it anymore. Then it's time for the yellow player to choose a 1 tree and to do, well, the same or less or more, depending on how many leaves. Suppose this player does 7, and then we go 1, 2. Now, if you want to place a leaf on top of another leaf, you have to spend 1 from the pool of leaves that you receive from your token. So I did 1, 2, 3 is discarded, 4, 5, 6, and 7, suppose. And this is the basic idea. Once we do that, then we go to the next spot on this track here, and now each player selects a 2 tree and places leaves, this time in that direction, again based on the number on the token you select for that specific turn. Once we all use a tree of each kind in the order indicated there, 1, 2, 3, 4, then the following trees we can choose the order in which we use them to blow leaves, but again we have to follow the direction of the wind. So as the game proceeds, you will have leaves everywhere. There will be stacks of leaves, sometimes with multiple leaves. If you place a squirrel, the good thing is that it locks that pile. No one can then put anything there. At the end of the game, we'll check for majority, and this time is not line majority like you saw before. When all the trees have sent out their leaves and all of the trees have been removed, we'll look at the majority, meaning each square will be controlled by the player that has a leaf on top. You look at that a bird's eye view, it doesn't matter how many leaves are there. So if you have a leaf on top or a squirrel on top, then you control that. And then you control every type of terrain on the board. So you see who controls the most squares in this area here for this type of terrain, and who controls the most squares in this area, in the green area, etc., etc., etc. For you control, again, check the control, and this time you score it based on this other table here, based again on how many players are in first place, so they control the most spaces there, how many in second place, and again cross-reference that, and you find how many points are assigned. Assign points to the players scoring each area individually, and after that the player with the highest score is the winner of the game. Bosk is a fairly unusual game in the structure, in the architecture of gameplay, because effectively you're almost playing 2 different games, and they're not even like equally balanced or equally important. The first half almost feels like advanced setup. Yes, you are scoring it at the end, and it's very important that you pay attention to what you're doing and you're trying to score high. But at the same time, you're actually setting yourself up for some big scoring later. So it's not just a mini game in itself. It's a mini game that is also set up for the other part of the game, which to me is the main game, because it takes longer. There are more decisions. I find there are more interesting dilemmas. It's much more tense. There's also more of a take that element there, so the interaction changes there, which is interesting because on one hand the board it looks so zen, and then the idea that these trees are disappearing, almost like life is a dream and everything dissolves into nothingness at the end, while I'm doing some serious take that action on the board, and boom, covering things, because it's area majority. Nothing that is good for me comes without being positively and directly bad for you. Every area Every area where I achieve majority is an area where I'm taking it away from you and maybe enjoying it a little too much. So you may be this, think of yourself as this peaceful dryad of the forest that is controlling the leaves and the cycles of nature, but you are a mean-spirited little dryad. As for the structure, again, that may not work for everybody because it may be a while, it may take you a couple of games before you see the connections between the two, before the two halves don't feel disjointed. But there are other games out there that are very successful that are based on a similar structure. Biblios pretty much has that split structure. For Sale also. So I don't think that's all that much of a problem. Actually, I think in the first half of the game you should set yourself up for good scoring later in the second part, but you shouldn't obsess about it because ultimately you have limited control because the template is gonna go who knows where. So you want to keep your options open. In fact, that's the fun part. The first section of the game is not to have airtight strategy because you can't have it, it's not reliable, but to have a range of possible options that will be profitable depending on where the template goes. But I totally see, by the way, the possibility here for somebody to overthink it because it's perfect information. And so if you have a player in your group that is prone to analysis paralysis, this game just may not work with them because they may just try to do everything perfectly, and that is just annoying. But I definitely I enjoy it. I enjoy gameplay, I enjoy setting up the situation and then resolving it in the second part of the game, which to me is the heart of the game. Because then you have such interesting decisions. You had two trees in the early phases, and you had to choose which one you want to use and how many leaves you want to project from there and where you want them to go, and is it worth it to spend an extra leaf just to take away a position from you, which gives me a better differential than if I place it in an empty space. The areas have all weird shapes, and so again it's interesting there to fight for position. Oh, I didn't realize that area went also there, and boom, somebody else places that leaf there, which changes the balance of the force on the board. I like area majority games, and I think this is an effective one. It has a fun theme, it has really nice production values. Those squirrels really make the difference. They're fun. Mechanically, I don't find them actually all that significant. But hey, when you have a squirrel sitting there on a pile of leaves, that matters from the point of view of the aesthetics of the game. Scoring, it's fine. Scoring the first half feels a little bit dry, and you had to go through everything, but you work together. Somebody is keeping there the table and giving the points, and somebody's telling you the results for each line, row and column is perfectly fine. And scoring the second scoring with the area majority, that's again, it's really rewarding and satisfying because that's where you see if your gameplay paid off. In general, I think it's a game with an interesting theme, with an unusual flow that may not be for everybody, with simple rules but a lot of interesting decisions. There is an element to take that which may not be obvious when you look at the cute squirrels and at the poetry of leaves falling from the trees, but it's there and I didn't mind it. I think it was pretty fun. Bosk, it's a new game, it looks good, it plays well, may not be for everybody, but we enjoyed it.